Hey NAI football fans, Corey Thorpe here with another edition of the NAIFBall Podcast, powered by AdCraft USA, your custom apparel, merch, and uniform experts. Our friends at AdCraft have been with us for many years now. They've run web stores for us multiple times. These guys are NAI fans and family who are experts in the apparel and merchandise world. AdCraft allows you to take the hassle out of ordering. Let their knowledgeable design and customer service staff handle everything from hosting the store online, shipping the product, and helping your customers so you can get back to the game. Find them online at adcraftusa.com. All right, NAI football fans, welcome to another episode of the NAIF Ball Podcast powered by AdCraft Custom Apparel and Merch. You heard the ad read before. They are the best in the business. We'll get right to the getting. I have been looking forward to this interview for quite a while. Been watching what Campbellsville has been doing over the last couple years and been very interested to see what's going on over there in Kentucky. Have head coach Jake Russell on tonight. Coach, how you doing?
Doing great. Just wrapped up spring ball last night with our annual spring game, so it's always kind of a bittersweet thing as a coaching staff. Be the last time on the field for as a team at least for almost 3.5 months, but there's also kind of a weight off the shoulders once you get to this point.
Yeah, because it's I mean, and I assume there's a little bit of anxiety for a head coach going through because you're sending your guys home with their
Mhm.
summer packet and going, oh Lord, I hope these guys come back in shape. Because it's nothing but fall that's between here and the first games of the season. But let's take a look back real quick. It was a banner year for Campbellsville. I did not go back in time, but has anybody told you the last time that Campbellsville had 9 wins in a season?
Well, yeah, we did look it up. That's one of those things that you'll put on your recruiting PowerPoint when you have a good season. So it's been 21 years, 2003, the last time they won 9 games.
And those recruits weren't even born yet,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
makes me feel really old.
yeah, that's true.
It was a great year last year. Even starting first thing, you have a game against U Pike, a little out of conference action. You play it at their place, and well, coach, that's a playoff team that you ended up beating by 1 point there. Talk to me about that game there and edging out a good offense.
Yeah, great offense. One of the best in the nation. That was a great challenge for our defense to start the season. And we've started our season the last 2 years with U Pike. Both games have went down to the wire. Obviously, Coach Phipps has got things rolling over there. They're doing a great job. And yeah, just a really fun game. And once you get to the end of the year, or even at this point, that's a game that, when it pops up on film as you're, showing offense or defense or whatever it is, you kind of look back and think, man, we were one play away from this season probably looking totally different, and we needed that win as a program. I think it was really really important for us this year to get off to a great start. As coaches, we knew we had the makings of a really really good team, potentially great, and I think even our players were really starting to believe that. But everybody loves their team in spring ball. Everybody loves their team in fall camp. There's always optimism, and for us to go get that first victory, I think that was really what propelled us to a phenomenal start to the season.
I mean, and you had a great out of conference slate. Super fun just looking through it between teams in the AAC and teams in the Sun, and even a D2 squad, former NAI, Roosevelt University, getting that one done. But I'm going to jump all the way into October here, where, man, I tell you what, who would have thought at 3 years ago that a game between Campbellsville and Cumberland would be a battle of undefeated squads, and that was a good one. You had to storm back a little bit and take the lead, and you have a 13-point fourth quarter to put that one away. Talk to me about a little bit of contrasting styles.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of contrast. Cumberland, great team this year. I mean, they were still, even after the season, probably a team that got overlooked, underranked, undervalued all year. Coach Mathis has just slowly built the Cumberland team into a really good program. They've never been easy to beat, and obviously, we're really good at quarterback this year. He was just a great football player, and I think his passing this year really kind of took a huge step up, and so that really made their team better. And they were really good on defense. So you know, for us in the MSC, you can feel and see the noticeable difference once we get from out of conference to in conference. The level of play overall for sure, but the speed and size, and as an offensive guy going against those defenses, it's a different beast. And so that was a great win for us. Like you said, two undefeated teams. We did a blackout here at home. That atmosphere was awesome. I mean, that's one of those games that, when our guys that were on the team, last year come back, they'll be like, man, remember that, blackout game we did against Cumberland, Tennessee. And obviously it was close throughout the game. I think we ended up winning by about 14, but it was really a one score or a close game all throughout. And had a big pick six right there towards the end to kind of seal the deal. And just again, another win that we needed to kind of keep us propelling towards, our goals as a team.
You do drop one. 2 weeks later, the Battle of Highway 55 in Columbia. That's a toughie to lose there. You know, but and I know I'll say it so you don't have to. There's no such thing as a good loss, but the fact that you're tied with Lindsay going into halftime, it's probably been a minute since Campbellsville and Lindsay had a game that tight.
Yeah, I think it has been. I was very fortunate to actually play on the last team that beat Lindsay, so it's been too long. We're definitely working hard to fix that, but it's been a great rivalry. I really enjoyed playing. My first game ever at Campbellsville was Thursday night at home against Lindsey Wilson, and I was like, man, this is awesome. It was packed, and I was like, this is not that bad. And that at the time was really close. My second year that I played here at Campbellsville, we were able to win the Battle of Highway 55, and our students and their students interact all the time. We're 20 minutes down the road. We'll go to Columbia to eat. They'll come to Campbellsville to eat, and so it is a really fun rivalry. I mean, we played golf with their staff last summer, so it's not all disdain and stuff. We get along pretty good, but yeah, Coach Kleckler, another guy that just does a phenomenal job with the defense. Defensive minded head coach, but they were a team that was much better probably than their finishing record, and again, just the grind of the MSC, but. That was a game where we actually played a lot better offensively than 10 points. And if you actually watch the end of the game, you talk about a heartbreaker. We got a completion, and as our guy was going to cross the goal line to win the game, got hit and fumbled with less than 10 seconds to go. And it was kind of the shock of, when he catches the ball and starts to go towards the goal line, you're like, man, we pulled it off, we won. I do think up to that point, our guys had kind of felt like they were bulletproof, and that like no matter what, happened in the game, we were going to find a way to win, just like we did against U Pike and Cumberland, Tennessee, in some of those close games. And looking back, and even at the time, we thought maybe this is the best thing for our season, top to bottom, was to actually lose and realize that if we don't do the small things right, we can get beat, and that our conference is really good, and that anybody can beat you.
And then you go through, and the last 3 weeks of the season are against very good teams. You go 2-1 against a Cumberland's team that's well coached. You beat a Bethel team who had a down year last year, had trouble finding an offensive identity. And then you have a game that you take Georgetown, another playoff team, to overtime, and you give them about as much as they want. I'll put it that way.
No doubt. That was, some really good wins down the stretch at Bethel. Kind of an early start for us that day. We made the trip in one day, which was very unique. We'll probably try to stay away from that to do that again. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. What had the most to do with it was they were really good defensively
Hmm.
and they had a great game plan offensively. So it really kept it a low scoring game. We didn't honestly play really well. And I think that's the sign of a really good team is when you don't play great or even really good that you still find a way to win. We made enough plays to get out of there with the win. And it's funny, you said they had a down year, and I think they were 7-3 and still spent
Right?
most of the year in the rankings. And yeah, and then obviously Georgetown game was just a classic. We fell behind 17-3, I think maybe to start the fourth quarter or early in the fourth quarter, and just a phenomenal job to battle back on both sides force overtime. I think the one explosive pass we gave up the whole game was the first play of overtime. And then we even stopped them a couple times on the one before they obviously had a great running game and scored. And then we fumbled the first play of overtime. And so again, just while football is the greatest game in the world, just that wave of emotions. At times thinking, man, we've pulled it off, we've done it. And at that point in the season, we've won conference, we're going to the playoffs. All those team goals we set before the year. And you may get into it here, but our last game of the year, we went into thinking if we can go and have a dominant win against another team that was a lot better than their finishing record, we felt like we had put ourselves in a position we would make the playoffs. And that was the best overall game we played because, as you said, that's a well coached team. That was a really talented team that had a lot of seniors on it as well. And that was just one of those days where everything went right for us. Our guys really came out and played well. They finished well. And to walk out of there with a pretty big margin of victory, we walked off the field that day convinced, and obviously we're biased towards our own team, thinking that we've got ourselves into the playoffs and we're not done this year.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be close. Um, was doing the bracketology down near the end of the year, and I'm just sitting there going, I don't know. I want to put Cumberland's in. There were a couple teams that were right on the bubble with y'all, whether it be
Mhm.
Southeastern, Concordia, Nebraska, who had excellent seasons as well. And honestly, you were right there. If you had a couple other bounces the other way, then I think you're in. But yeah, I mean that hurt. I think is probably gonna, even though yes, you do not. It's a different team. It's a different year. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Coach speak, coach speak, coach speak. Um, but I know good and well that players and coaches carry the hurt from a snub with them into the next season. And honestly, especially over a long summer, I don't know that there's much that's a better motivator for you than knowing you were right there and snubbed and knowing that you've got to get that much better to make the playoffs in the coming year.
No doubt. Nail on the head there. We just said as a staff and have told our players, we can't leave it up to, the opinions of guys making really tough decisions because, like you said, just as we felt we were very deserving, so did 6 or 8 other teams that also were deserving, right? And you know, now if you win the conference championship, you're going to the playoffs. So, we had our opportunity, even, losing that close game to Lindsay, we were still in a situation where you go win your final couple games, you beat Georgetown, you're going to be minimum the co-conference champ, whatever it was, and you would be in the playoffs. And like you said, a couple plays away, it is very motivating. I think what we've been most encouraged by as coaches, and me as a head coach, is to a player and to a man, our players in their exit meetings, our coaches in their exit meetings this spring during workouts, this spring during spring practices, they've said, Coach, last year was a letdown. Like we didn't set out to go 9-2. We didn't set out to, have the best season in 21 years, to do this, to do that, whatever it was. We set out to win the national title. And obviously, to do that, you have to make the playoffs. You probably have to win your conference championship. And so, the goals stay the same. And, um, I do think it was a really good motivating factor for us that's been on our mind. Just me personally, and I think it trickles down into the staff and team. We're not a big chip on the shoulder type program. We just believe in us and try to focus on what we can do. And I know that sounds coach speaky, to be honest, but it's really what we've tried to instill into our guys. And like you said, and I'm sure we'll get into this as well, is our team this year is way different. We pretty much had the same team here, our coaching staff's first 2 years. We lost just a couple major contributors from year 1 to 2, and we had our first off season as a program and as a staff here. And that's why we had a great season. Well, we had 24 guys go through senior day. That's one of the reasons we were really good. Well, now who's going to step up and fill those roles? So we've been trying to develop guys. We've got young guys that are getting opportunities. We've got guys that have been here 2 or 3 or even 4 years that are getting put into the opportunity now, and guys that have came into the program even since last year. And now we're trying, what is this team going to look like? Because it was very evident in spring practice that this team, in some ways, maybe even a lot of ways, is going to look a lot different, but the goal remains the same.
Yeah, so let's take a look at your team coming back. You do return a majority of your offense, including your signal caller, your junior there, Jagger Gillis, your leading running back in Trey Bass. You do lose, another good running back there in Charles Collins. But really, you're going to have to replace a couple receivers who were all conference guys in Shepperson and Seiler combined for 1,400 and almost
Mhm.
50 yards, which between the two of them, that's very nearly half of your receiving yards from a year ago. Talk to me about getting Jagger some new targets out there.
Yeah, so obviously Luke and Dre were phenomenal football players. Luke left our school as the school's all-time leading receiver. I think Dre is right up there behind him, or maybe even maybe right behind him. And also we lost other guys too. 5 of our top 6 receivers from last year, graduated, and so it's very exciting because there's some young guys, that have been in our program now either a year or two that we've worked really hard to develop. They're chomping at the bit. We have been very proactive, as everybody is, in addressing needs through the different avenues that are out there in college football now. We've been very fortunate, and intentionally we've added guys mid-year. Because we feel like if we can get them here in the spring, they get used to our culture, our standard, our expectation, and they learn the offense or defense, and they come into fall camp with a huge leg up. So we did bring in some guys, and specifically at the receiver position, but we also have some guys here that are going to break out this year. Jagger, he's phenomenal with 25, 26, 27 starts under his belt. He's a winner. He's improved a ton in some small things, but at the end of the day, he's a really good winner. And I think from year 1 to 2, what he did the most was he got the belief of everybody around him that no matter what the situation was, the U Pike game, the Lindsay game, drove all the way down the field and made the play to, that would have and should have won the game. The comeback against Georgetown, the great performances all year. He proved to his teammates that he is a winner, and we've got a great quarterback room just in general that keeps pushing him every day. And we've got good pieces, as you mentioned, on the offense. And so we've got to get better on off. I take a lot of pride in the offense. I'm an offensive head coach. I still do call the offense. I coach the quarterbacks. I love it. I should always tell people I'm a quarterbacks coach that somebody for some reason hired as an offensive coordinator, and who knows why, but hired as a head coach. And I love that part of it. And so, I'm really looking forward to kind of a new offense where, just to be very transparent with you, last year having Luke Shepperson and Andre Seiler over there a lot of times on the same side, it was almost like a get out of jail free card where it's like, man, we're struggling on offense or things aren't going quite well. And those guys would just, I won't say bail us out a lot because they worked really hard. And a lot of it was we're intentionally trying to use them. But those guys were really good. And at the end of the day, coaches are only as good as their players. And, your players will make you look a lot better of a coach than you really are a lot of times.
Defensively, it was a great season last year, ranked sixth by SP Plus
Mm.
in the nation. You do lose a lot of pieces in all three spots, especially your defensive line, where you lose Jaden Cray. That's a big one for you. But you do have a couple guys like Ellis Reed, DQ Brown, CJ Cutliff that are going to be good pieces for you. But how do you go next man up and get at least close to that sixth in the nation kind of ranking on defense again this year?
We are very blessed here to have the best defensive coordinator, in my opinion, obviously. Maybe in college football, definitely, that I've seen at our level or coached with or against. Coach Ford and his staff, they've done an unbelievable job. Coach Ford is so good at putting each guy and using what we have at the moment on defense and putting them in a great situation. I also think the way that they prepare and that we practice, so we do some things that a lot of people consider are crazy. We tackle in practice, full pads, in and out of season, in the spring, twice a week in season. And it really, I think it helps with tackling. I think it helps keep our guys healthy, as crazy as that sounds. And I think most importantly, it sets a mindset for our guys and what we want to be as a program. Going against our defense every day is one of the greatest assets that our offense has. This spring, the defense has kicked our tail day after day after day. They dominated the spring game. And I've told our quarterback room and our whole offense, we're going to look back when we win the national title next year and say, I'm so glad that we got to go against what I think will be one of, if not the best defenses in the nation every day, because it's a grind against them in practice. And like you said, we did lose a lot. We lost some great football players. We lost some guys that have started 3 or 4 years here, some guys that have been with us 3 or 4 years with our coaching staff. But we've recruited really hard. And like I said earlier, we do things intentionally in our program. We have a Futures Bowl once a week where the guys that don't dress and play, they do an inter squad scrimmage, but we take that really serious. We grade it just like we do a game. We treat it just like a game. It's not just put the ball down, let them get their reps. They do an extra day of weights every week, right? And we've worked really hard to make sure that when the next guy has to step up, he's prepared. And that we as coaches have a plan, and Coach Ford's the master of this, of having a plan. If this player goes down, if this player doesn't return, Jaden Cray, our sack leader from last year, phenomenal football player. So proud of the growth he made in his 2 years here. He kind of unexpectedly didn't come back, which is fine. Made his decision. Love Jaden, and we've been blessed. We've only had 3 football players in 2 years leave our program to go play football somewhere else. And right now in college football, that's unheard of. I'm hoping I didn't jinx us and that 35 of them are going to come in next week in exit meetings and say they don't want to come back. But our retention, my first spring here when I took over a little more than 2 years ago, we had 60 total guys in the program. This spring we had 117 going through spring workout, spring practice, and that's really been one of the big differences in our program: the depth and the talent level. In the development and being very intentional now in recruiting, where our recruiting class has went from 70, 80 plus guys every year, which is kind of normal in NAI, to we signed less than 40 guys this year, and we're able to be very specific and picky in that.
Yeah, it. This is the way of things in this year,
Mm.
in this day and age of college football, and when you have the ability to sign buku numbers of people, there are a lot of people who do that. Um, I have a feeling that I would rather sign the guys that I really think are going to work out. It's higher risk, but it can definitely be higher reward. for you there. So next year, pulled up the old schedule. Y'all have 3 playoff teams from a year ago on your schedule. You face 2 of them on the road. 2 of them within the first 3 weeks between St. Francis of Indiana facing the all-time winningest head coach in NAIA history, and a good U Pike team with Coach Phipps there, and a Weber team that ended last year scaring the mess out of the top teams in the Sun. That's a whale of a way to start your season.
So one thing we heard from our rep, from kind of our region that were in the meetings and the playoff meetings was they felt like you didn't beat anybody good, and we're sitting there like, did they watch Cumberland, Tennessee play? Did they watch Bethel play? U Pike's in the playoffs. Like you said, by the end of the year, Weber was playing really good. And that's a very tough trip, and we actually have to go back for a second year, which is a unique situation. But so I told our team in the last meeting of the year, I said, guys, I'm going to go try to find the best out of conference teams that will schedule us. And as you get more wins and are more successful, it's harder to find teams. So we're excited to go play. I know they won back-to-back national titles not too long ago. Like you said, just phenomenal coaching. Great tradition. That conference is always just stacked, and so we're very excited to go and test ourselves and say, are we any good this year? Do we have a long way to go? Which obviously, as coaches, you always feel like you have a long way to go at the beginning of the year. How good are we going to be? And one thing we found, and we tried to study other teams' schedules and say, we felt like the teams that played really highly ranked out of conference teams, if you win, you are set up almost for a little bit of room for error, right? If you lost, as long as it was close, you really weren't punished. And so we went and said, we're confident we can be competitive with the best teams in the nation. And then, like you said, we're going back to Weber, which is a really tough trip. Coach Pooch, I actually coached with him. He was the defensive coordinator at Weber when I was coaching quarterbacks. He does a great job with the program and specifically with the defense. It's always hot that time of year, so there's that battle as well. And then, like you said, U Pike again, which the last 2 games have come down to 2 plays. They're going to be loaded with talent. They're going to throw the ball for, a million yards again next year, as they always do. And, we're really excited. And we feel like that's going to even better this year prepare us for the gauntlet that is the MSC conference.
And I feel like some of the changes and the fact that y'all had a good season and you finished in the top 25. I have my own thoughts about pole inertia and all that good stuff. But the fact that the changes to the NAIA and where they're playoffs, and you're looking at end of year records now in the playoffs instead of at the time where they were ranked at the time. And that's a new change. I think that's a much better change because I don't care if you beat a team week 1 that ends up being a world beater the rest of the season, but they're a nobody at the beginning of the season, you should be rewarded for that. I mean, there were very few people. I won't say nobody knew because I'm sitting here going, you need to watch U Pike. Very few people were calling U Pike to do much of anything in the AAC. It's Reinhardt in the field and death taxes and Reinhardt. Very few people were saying this U Pike team could be a really good squad. They were a really good squad. But that win at the beginning of the season, because of how the metrics were with the selection committee, downplayed that U Pike win because it's the beginning of the season. They weren't worth anything. So I really think those couple of changes are going to help y'all and teams that are trying to come from outside the polls to inside the polls and make the playoffs. I think that's a really good change on the selection committee's part.
Yeah, that is exactly right. We knew when we played U Pike. I think the very next week they took Georgetown right down to the brink.
Yep.
Really close game as well. Like you said, you mentioned Weber by the end of the year was playing really well. Those things should be looked at. Even something like, going on a 2 day, 13, 14-hour trip in 95-degree weather, really humid against, a team like Weber. That's a good win, even if the score maybe isn't, what you thought it would be. Just going up, being able to go on the road, because that is kind of a playoff type thing where you're traveling, really far at times, maybe to places you normally don't go, and able to get a win on the road. But yeah, the rankings are interesting. We kept looking at the couple of computer models that they use, that they're we say supposed to use for the playoffs, and we were well represented in those. Finished really high. Our conference finished first in all of those, and we kind of kept pointing towards those. We started so far out of the minds of the voters in the coaches poll. I think that really
Mm-hmm.
set us back. We started 67th, like in the, I think, the VSN or whatever that one's called. And, we, by it took us going, I think, 5-0 before we were even receiving votes or ranked. I think that's when we beat Cumberland, Tennessee, and then dropped to Lindsay, and we dropped out of the rankings for 2 more weeks. And so it was a battle all year to get the, I guess, recognition or the respect that we felt like we deserved. We knew we were a really good team. And it's really tough, right? Because a coach on the other side of the country, because NAI football is not on ESPN, the games aren't, all the time easily accessible. I follow our conference very close. Certain teams maybe that we play or I have a connection to, but I don't watch, a lot of NAI football from around the country every single week, right? We just don't have the time to do that. Maybe like you would SEC football or something like that. The great thing that, as you mentioned, I think we will get the advantage of this year. And I told last year's team, when we had to have that end of the year exit meeting, which again was a very unique end to the season, I said, guys, when we, win a national championship next year, make the playoffs, all those things we felt like we could have done this year, you guys set us up for that, because we will start at least in the minds of people. I don't know, I would think maybe in the 20s in the rankings, or at least right there receiving votes. And if we have another great start to the season, we will probably be closer to where we feel like we should be.
I'm just gonna toot my own horn real quick. I'm going back through um, our media poll, and we had y'all receiving votes after week 2. So I'm just saying, and by week 10, we had y'all reasonably ranked. Yeah, no, I had to go back and look at and pull my own receipts on that one. I really hope that with the changes to the ratings, the polls, whatever they want to call this thing, that it will have a little less poll inertia, and that we'll be able to find a couple teams that are outside of the polls that make their way in easier, because this is at least the second consecutive year that I can remember this happening. Last year was Mid America Nazarene that came from absolutely nowhere. If you're looking, you could see them. It's hard. So, Coach, it's you know it as well as I do. If you're not continuously improving, you're getting worse. There is no in between. There is no staying the same. So, what area of your program, whether it's something on the field or something off the field, are you really wanting to focus in on, home in on in 2025?
So we have the exact same coaching staff for the third straight season coming up. which is extremely rare in college football at any level, probably high school football at any level. So that is, one of the reasons that we've been able to have some success really quick. As I mentioned, our retention has been phenomenal. Knock on wood or whatever cliche thing you're supposed to do to keep from jinxing that. And so, as I mentioned before, we're going through this huge shift in our program where when we took over at Campbellsville, there was a really good core group of guys that came here out of high school. While they hadn't won a lot of games, they actually were competitive against some really good teams. There was some talent here. We were able to bring with us from our previous school in a different conference some transfer guys with us. So for the last couple of years, those two core group of guys, and we did bring in probably more transfers than we would ever would definitely than we ever would again the first year. We just said let's get as much talent as we can on this roster to get competitive fast. As any coach knows, every win you get as a coach, you become a better recruiter.
Yep.
Every win you get as a program, your guys just naturally start to believe that we're supposed to win, right? And so, you know, now for the first 2 years, we really didn't lose anybody, and then losing 20 guys that were most of them really big contributors. And we really have about one more year where we're going to have a big influence from either the guys that transferred in that first year or the guys that were here. And so, to answer your question, the biggest thing in our program right now is resetting the standard, the culture, the very cliche, generic word, culture. Um, that we have and expect and want in our program. And we're having to do that because now it's a group of guys that we recruited in as 17, 18-year-old, kids, freshmen, that we're saying now be patient, develop, buy into the things that have nothing to do with football, like academics, being on time, even just small things within the game, like receivers blocking, right? I always tell no receiver said, I can't wait to go to college and block on screenplays or run plays, right? No quarterback said, I cannot wait to hand the ball off and fake, right? They want to throw the ball down the field. The receivers want to, they want to catch the ball and run, all those type of things, right? No guy comes in and says, man, coach, I cannot wait to be a gunner on punt or to be, the number three, left three on kickoff return, anything like that. And so, how do you get a bunch of guys that were all stars on their high school team to buy into those small things? So, this spring has been different than last spring by a lot. It's been a big challenge for our staff. The ceiling of this team is extremely high. We actually have a team meeting Monday. They haven't heard this spill yet. I don't know when this is coming out. Uh,
It'll
but
come
what I'm
out
going to tell
Tuesday.
them is, and what I would tell anybody is, our ceiling as a team next year will be extremely high, but our floor will be lower than it probably was last year. We were a very mature group last year. We were really good at football, but the guys were bought into a man, and we felt like we were just going to have a good year, and we were going to be able to beat the teams that we should. 7 of our 9 wins were by 14 points or more, and that's because that group was really good. This year's team, we expect and our goal is to win the national title. But this group has a big difference in the ceiling and floor, and so we are daily right now and through the spring, even through the summer, we will, and especially when they get back in fall camp, we're going to be extremely hard and strict on all the small things that really don't have anything to do with football. We're very talented, but so is every team on our schedule. And at the end of the day, if you go back and look at Lindsay and Georgetown last year, while we lost those games, it was just a few small things here and there.
That is the glory of and the curse of football. 5 plays calls it in so many games. Coach, thanks for coming on the podcast tonight. It is a privilege and a pleasure to get to talk to you. And look, it's gonna be a fun season in the Mid South. You've got some turnover here and there, at big name colleges, but the guys that were filling in, they're not unfamiliar with their programs, so it's going to be a little bit of the same. It's going to be fun though. I'm looking forward to it and seeing what comes out and how the quote unquote big three, if they're able to stay up there, or if you're going to see some teams upset the apple cart a little bit.
Yeah, as 3 or 4 other conferences around the nation would say, the MSC is the best conference in NAIA. We're the deepest. I think, I call it the SEC of NAIA, and I'm sure people will put that on in their locker room, which is fine. We love the competition. I loved playing in this conference as a player. I love coaching in it. It's very fun, and you get to go against the best coaches every single week. We love that challenge. We talk about that as a lot of staff, and it's so cool. And then on top of that, the players, of course. But I appreciate you having me on, man. Just absolutely love what you guys do for NAI football. It's as any NAI coach would tell you, we get asked all the time, Coach, what is NAI? Right. And, all the questions that come along with that. And, even people that watch football say, are you D2, are you D3, are you D1, D4? And it's like, no, we're NAI. And as soon as you say that, they look at you like you're playing a different sport. And it's like,
Right.
no, this is legit awesome football all around the country. And we really do appreciate you and you guys from NAI football and all the coverage you give and everything like that. And most importantly, it's really cool for the players, man. They deserve it. And it's awesome to see your guys' growth as well.